streaming and buffering. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Be With Artists, episode 108, with artistic and creative direction as an indie with Cave Darr. So, hello, Cave. How are you doing today? Hello, everybody.
Hey guys,
Hello, everybody.
I'm doing good.
Welcome
Good.
to
Um,
Welcome Be With Artists.
Finally started to cool down where we're at.
Episode
Um,
108.
so
Artistic,
can't complain.
and creative. Can't complain, yeah. I'm glad you made it, especially at this time. I know there was a short little delay, so thanks for everybody in the chat for connecting at last minute. Also want to say thanks for everybody who connected last couple of weeks ago with Ashley. It was a very well-received interview. I know it was long, but it was a good one. And so today we're going to have a number of interesting topics, including the ideas of independent art direction and also trajectory in the industry of breaking yourself in, the future of Blender 5.0, and having an opinionated discussion of the features that are coming in and a little bit about the industry of the near future. Because next week, Blender 4.5 is coming out, and in November, Blender 5.0 is coming out. So things are moving quickly. So I'm really excited to see. And we also may be touching on techniques of the artwork, including shaders and other concepts of cartoonization and more. I'm really excited. Cave is a high caliber person that I am extremely honored to have here. And I'm really happy that you're willing to join us today for the next hour or so. So yes,
Thanks so much.
I'm super excited actually. So let me pull up our questions. So first things first, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, the mysterious but also talented Cave Darr?
Yeah. Let's see. I guess we'll start with my current gig. My current gig is art director at Reddit. A lot of people ask like, "Oh, why does Reddit need like 3D art for?" Like, I make the little white guy. His name is Snoop. So I designed the character and did all the modeling and lighting, and now illustration, and then just overseeing uh, just general usage, because it's like his usage has kind of grown throughout the company, and so now like other teams use the model and vendors use the model, and so part of it is just making sure everything is like on brand. How I got my start, yeah, that's him, that's the guy.
You designed the character as well.
Yeah, and that's actually I think how we met, right? Because like
That is true.
I was rigging up the hands, and I could use some pointers. I'm actually excited to show off the hands later because so many iterations on those. Um, yeah, so I got my start as a mechanical engineer. So I went to school for engineering at University of Michigan. I worked in the auto industry. Uh, First for 5 years at Ford Motor Company,
Auto
and it
industry.
wasn't. Yeah, and it wasn't for me. It was nothing art related, like zero art at all. And um, I was like looking for a way out, and that's kind of when like YouTube was starting to blow up a little bit, and like online art education was just starting to become a thing. Um, so I went down that route. Eventually, uh, went to an atelier in Toronto, tried to strike out on my own as an artist, burned through all of my savings, and then had to go back to being an engineer for another 3 years. Then quit a second time, moved to California, and then that time, like things kind of took off, and we've kind of escalated from there.
Whoa, so you did a deep dive and changed your career practically and went straight into
Yeah,
art. That's incredible.
yeah.
So, but you mentioned you burnt all your savings as you pivoted. And how was that experience? How did you survive that pivot?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Oh, my mentor at the time, like a big part of like they were running an indie studio, and a big part of their income was like they would do the convention circuit, and I helped them out at various cons, and they were hustling prints. This was back in 2014, I think, which is kind of a very different scene than it is now.
Mm.
So they were just, I swear, they were just like printing money, raking in a hand over fist. And I was like, yeah, I could do this. I could make my own prints. So when I kind of graduated from the atelier, um, so to speak, and like struck out on my own, I tried to do the same thing. Um, I just didn't have that. I mean, there's a lot of things I didn't have, but one of which was like the breadth and quality of work. And so that was a little bit of a wake up call. Like, oh, this is going to be much harder um, than I thought. And it is exactly as stressful as you can imagine. Um, but as I mean, as much as I didn't like engineering, I mean, it saved my bacon that I had that to fall back.
I'm glad you managed to survive and work it out. And now look at you, where you are today, creating hands and rigging and rendering for Reddit themselves, a
Everyone's
giant
dream,
brand.
modeling hands.
But you also have a number of side gigs as well with a current game that you've been working on as well, right? The Mighty Brew.
Yep.
Oh,
Well, Mighty Brew is canned, but the one next to it, that game is called Ikro,
Ecro.
which I'm working on right now. Yep.
Great.
And we're hoping to have a demo, a 20-minute demo out for that in time for GDC this year. So fingers
Hey,
crossed.
that's looking good. So you've pivoted from engineering, cars, and other things, and now you're into the art direction. So, what is art direction exactly? I did have a slight mix up with the publicity of declaring you as the creative director.
Oh,
So,
that's okay.
I know it might be a common mishap. Extremely sorry, but what is the difference between an art director and a creative director, and what does an art creative director do?
Um, this is so art is one of those difficult careers where every company has like their own hierarchy, and define things differently a little each way. So even to get more technical, I'm technically at Reddit a senior creative lead because art director just doesn't exist. But no one knows what a senior creative lead does. But it's essentially the same thing. So in my company, I'm kind of in charge of the the personality of SNU and 3D art. So I kind of look at the needs of the brand and try and come up with what is the personality of this character going to be. So first of all, like how do they look? But then like how do they move and express themselves? What's appropriate and inappropriate? And then how do I use this design to kind of like enhance the sort of attributes that Reddit wants to have. And then just because of my, I guess, like more technical background, um, not only am I in charge of making sure that all of that is the way it works, but I'm also like on the ground floor of like doing all the design and all of the um, modeling and geometry nodes.
Geometry nodes
Um,
too. Wow.
oh yeah, we'll get into it. So
Funny.
I kind of handle like the team is actually quite small. Um, and at least in my studio, I'm the only illustrator. So not only do I oversee all this stuff, but I also have to build all the systems and do all the illustration at the low level too.
That's
But
incredible. It
in
seems
a
like you wear a lot of hats, a lot of roles, a lot of artistic
yeah,
directions and angles.
and that's kind of like the oh, that's some early work there. Uh, um, so actually, that character this is, I guess, like a good example of like where I started out. So this is like a year after I had been getting into Blender, that little kind of like Zelda-esque like equipment loadout. This was around the time I was starting to um, I was starting to transition because I used to be a strictly 2D artist, specifically painter, before I started getting more and more into 3D.
Huh.
But I didn't answer your first question. So art direction. So in general, art direction is
It
just
was a
like
nice little
is like
deviation, a nice little
yeah.
tiki tour.
Um,
So back to art direction. Yes.
yeah. So art direction, like you're the inputs that you have are like what are the needs of the organization or the project, and then the output is the direction, actionable attributes that the art needs to have in order to satisfy the needs of the project at like a very, very high level. And then the difference between the creative director and the art director is usually the creative director is even like one level on top. So the art director is answerable to the creative director, and the creative director is trying to figure out um, like, well, what are the needs of the company? So they kind of decide the needs of the company and the needs of the project, and then they cascade those down to the art director.
Fascinating. I guess the art direction is more of a granular scope of understanding the artwork for the particular product of media. Meanwhile, the creative director understands the purpose of the project and the media for the particular client or financing or company, I guess.
Yep.
Oh, seems like
Yeah.
you got the more fun end of it.
Oh, for sure, for sure. My creative director is like a pretty talented illustrator in his own right, and he does not get to draw anymore. And like I can tell that he misses it sometimes. Or he's like, oh, maybe we should do this project, like mostly because it would be fun, not necessarily because it's like absolutely mission critical.
Yes, yes.
So I'm glad I'm definitely not that far the chain.
Yeah, it's difficult when you get into a full-time position with a responsibility, people under you, and then still have some time to work on your side project. Which leads me on to my next question is how are you managing to work with a full-time position as an art director while you're developing a game? How is that how are you doing this?
That's a good question. I just work a lot. I mean, that's just the general answer. I don't
You're a
like I
workaholic
do
right
I do
here.
have other yeah, like I do have other hobbies. Well, D&D, I like playing music, I like playing video games. Um, and like I try and make time for those, but most nights if I'm not doing family stuff because I'm married with a kid. So usually if we don't have like scheduled family time and my son is asleep, I'm usually ticking things off of my to-do list. Like I have a giant whiteboard over here, and every Monday, I just like write in all the stuff I have to do and try and make a checklist. Um, nothing too exciting other than you just work. You just work a lot, and everything that's not essential, you just kind of have to.
It
Uh,
sums up piece by piece.
Gosh.
That's
But
good.
I mean, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you are probably equal level workaholic. I know you do a lot, uh, also.
Yes, I do. I struggle. Well, my principal focus is balancing life and not burning out because I do love working.
Yeah.
This job is so complex and so fun and so rewarding and visually satisfying. It's difficult to get out of it.
You ever sometimes this happens to me. Do you ever like you're in the shower doing shower things and then you're just like, wait a second, what if I like did this node chain? Like what would happen? Or like you get a little problem in your head of like, oh, how would I solve this? And then instead of like going and doing the fun thing, you're like, no, I need to like go, build this node group out just to see if it will work. Because if you don't, it'll like bug you. Did that ever happen to you?
It happens to me all the time. Some of my best inspirations are away from the computer. So I do have to make it a priority to take a walk, maybe a little bit every day, get out of the city or get out of the house in the weekends, stay religiously away from the computer for a couple of days.
I have to stay away from the computer like an hour before bedtime, because if I'm working, like if I work right up into the buzzer and then go to bed, then I'll just have dreams where I'm just doing like nonsense, just nonsense stuff like in Blender. Like I'll be trying to hook up some sort of node system in my dream, and it totally won't work because like it's a dream. But just the worst. Those are always just the worst night's sleep. And I'll wake up at 3 in the morning and realize that I'm not actually at my computer and be like, tell me, what are you doing? Um, yeah, comes with the territory, I guess.
It does come with the territory. So you have a family as well. You've been working with that, and you had to take a deep dive into change your career and get into things. So what pushed you? You mentioned that you weren't too satisfied with where you were. So what pushed you to
Mhm.
get into artistic direction and being part of a team and
Uh,
supervising other artists and doing a little bit of everything? What was your deep core push into that angle?
so there's kind of like an intentional one and a non-intentional one. And the non-intentional one's probably the biggest factor. So the biggest factor is like I didn't go to art school, right? So I'm not classically trained. Like I've definitely had teachers and mentors. So I'm not self. I don't like saying I'm self-taught because definitely people helped me on my journey. Um, but because I didn't go to school, I didn't get like the formalized, like the formalized curriculum. So like I couldn't go work in a AAA studio as a 3D generalist because I think there are just skills they have that I haven't had to pick up yet. So I haven't like slotted into the system. So because I kind of cobbled together my art skill set, I kind of just do whatever's like necessary at the time, just like learning the project set, learning the things you need at that time. So I became like a bit of a generalist, and when you're a generalist, you tend to work on smaller teams. Like a big team, they have a lot of people who are specialists. If you're
Mm-hmm.
a small team, usually a small number of generalists. And because I'm kind of in this generalist role, I think that naturally kind of lends to small teams until you get to the point where um, you're an art director. But an art director of a small team. I don't think I could art direct. Say again, I don't think I could art direct like a AAA game. I think that's probably even a whole nother skill set.
Yeah, that would be another level of delegation, sub-delegation, and sub-sub-delegation. Yes.
Mm.
So here's a good
And then the
question.
intention.
Hmm?
Oh, sorry. So the other factor is that um, I've been trying to break into the industry for like a really long time. As I said, like I tried it, I failed. I was an engineer, so like that whole process was like 6 or 7 years. Um, and eventually, I became allergic to systems where you need to be picked by someone. If that makes sense, like applying for jobs, like on ZipRecruiter, like you got to wait for someone to be like, yes, you are the one, like you are the chosen one. Um, so so I tried to like take on projects and build structures and shape my education in a way that like I could just do the thing without being picked. Right? Which also kind of led me to be more of a generalist, where it's like I have an idea for a project, who's going to do the project? I'm not going to wait until um, someone picks me for whatever they're working on.
Yes, I reached that conclusion as well. Well, typically because I'm very far away from the industry at the moment, from language barrier, distance barrier, just a different country. And so I also became a generalist in that regard because I needed to tackle any problem or any issue that I could get and also manage to make myself self sustainable with or without the decisions of others. So I had to fit inside the pipeline in any piece to get the job done. But your artistic,
Yeah.
I've been taking a closer look at your art pieces here, and I really love your taste in grass, trees,
Oh,
foliage.
thank you.
I think you have a very characteristic grass style. I love it.
Yeah, I think this comes from like like Zelda is at my core. Like I played Ocarina of Time when I was 8 years old, which is just the perfect, just when the N64 came out. Um, and like I've been just a Zelda simp ever since. So like I always want to be the magic fairy boy running through like a mysterious woods. That's like my happy place. So I could uh I, I could I could make illustrations of little characters in big mysterious woods forever and never get bored of it.
It's beautiful. You really mastered the concept. So I guess with the transition mentally of getting into that concept, mentioned you were starting to be a generalist, getting into shaders and geometry nodes, modeling. You had your art background, you're transferring your art into 3D, you started modeling things. In your skill set, how did you know what to polish? How did you know what to develop?
Um, I really didn't, and it could be I go back and forth on whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Because the things that I'm doing now is way different than the stuff that I set out to do. Um, so my first guiding star was like Bobby Chu in Schoolism, which is like a big fine art thing. They do a huge convention now. But back in the day, it was more like a small YouTube channel with like a little um, like online art school attached to it. And he, at the time, his specialization was like concept art for live action movies, and that was like all I was exposed to. So I was like, oh, okay, well, like he seems to be doing all right with this. I guess that's the thing that I'm gonna do. And I went in that direction, and that's why I was a painter before I got into 3D. I did that for again like 7 years. um, so I didn't really think too critically of like what I wanted to do. I was just kind of doing and learning the stuff from people who seemed to be successful. So on one hand, I think if I started 3D sooner, I probably would have been successful sooner because like pretty much within a year of going focusing on 3D, things started to take off. But then on the other hand, it's like I learned a lot and picked up a lot of sensibilities from being a painter um, that I would probably be lacking if I just went straight into 3D.
It seems like there's, wow. In my opinion, there's no shortcut. I wish I started earlier too, when I was just rampaging around the world, getting lost,
Yeah,
or teaching English or managing houses as a landlord just to survive type thing, riding a bike through the city.
yeah.
But it's the cards you got, and I think you're playing them quite well. I really love this piece
Now
by
it's
the
like,
campfire.
oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's another Ikro mood piece. So I haven't pitched this game yet. I'm hoping to just use art. I mean, like the gameplay will be good, but I'm really hoping that the art's what does it. So I'll keep you updated. Maybe next March, we'll see.
Next match.
Um, I was gonna say coding is the thing now. It's like, man, why didn't I learn coding when I was in college? I should have done that. Like, I would give anything. I would I would give up at least a couple fingers on my left hand to like be as proficient in Unity as I am in Blender. That's like my biggest stumbling block right now.
That makes sense. I wish I had more code. I feel like this year, though, or the past 2 years, there has been a bit of an eclipse or awakening for accessibility to code.
Yeah.
Lately, with the evolution in the industry and different types of technologies, which I highly appreciate. Appreciate is up to my game by 10, especially when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to doing my own fork of Blender or doing development with the source code and making the tools and the add-ons that I need for pipelines or whatever. So I do appreciate that now, sir. I guess we're not too completely left behind if we didn't start early right now.
Yeah, and now there's Godot. Like I started tinkering with Godot last year, and I can feel that they were just like, whoever likes Blender should like our program. Tailored it that way. It feels so nice. I'm not conversant in it yet, but perhaps one day.
Perhaps one day. Great. So you mentioned you like the transferal of your painting or traditional skills in artwork with these real life stills, for example. I really love all of them. How would you transfer some of these into 3D with your techniques? What's your process?
Oh,
What were the things that you had to
yeah.
learn?
So the things specifically about painting, it's not so much the style or like the brushwork. Um, it's basically the fundamentals. So um, in 2D art, excuse me, like composition is a real big deal, and your so like how big are shapes? What's the arrangement of just two-dimensional shapes on the picture plane? And what's light against dark? What's the size proportions of things? Like where are the gesture lines of the composition? That is um, that's the bread and butter of 2D. Um, these ones are kind of interesting. So there's a lesson that I had not learned yet when I was doing these illustrations, where I was like laser focused on um, capturing what I see exactly. Like all
Right.
the values are right, all the colors are right, like the quality of light is exactly how I see it. Um, and because at that time, um, when you're painting and it sucks, you're like, "Ah, my lighting fundamentals aren't good enough. Meaning, um, oh, I don't understand how light works. Like maybe my perspective is off, or my shadows are off, or my colors are off, and like that's why. So I would always do this where it's like something would suck, and then I'd study that lots and lots and lots and lots and lots, which is part of where I was doing this. But then when you get into 3D and you're making an illustration, and my first illustrations are just god awful. No one will see them.
I
They were
have
they're
some of
really
them
bad,
here, no?
and I'm like, no. But they're like, oh, these are really bad. Like, but how? Like the lighting, it's physically calculated. Because I love cycles. I use cycles almost exclusively for the final renders. So it's like the lighting's all physically calculated. The perspective is all mathematically calculated. This should all be perfect. Why does it suck? And the reason that it sucked was the other stuff I was talking about, the composition, the value breakdown. And then the lesson that I hadn't learned is it's like it's not enough to just replicate what you see, but to try and uh, like fictionalize it, or like goose it that last 5% to make it more appealing than what you see. So then eventually in Blender, I started monkeying around with the post processing and like doing some things that are physically impossible, like with the shaders to try and like push it past uh, what it should be, right? And that's kind of the thing I'm always thinking about now is like how do you kind of elevate it um, to that level?
Yeah, that's an interesting concept because your this piece here, I imagine you did this one on the left a little earlier before you started getting into your forest vibe with painterly
Mm-hmm.
or more material and kind of a deeper lens or a little bit of a
Ah,
painterly effect. So you started here and then you got to here in a practical
well, that's
sense.
kind of it. That's kind of just a different style. So like I do like like if the stuff at Reddit that I do is all super clean shapes, everything is
Very
like kind of hard surface. Um, like we have an illustration library that I can show. Then there's just like hundreds of like a pencil, a phone, bush, coffee cup, you know, and like everything has to be like really like nice and clean and smooth. So I do work in that style too. That Doom illustration was when uh, Doom Eternal was coming out, and I just finished 2016. I'm gonna do fan art, and it's gonna get a billion likes, and it didn't get any likes. But I still dig it. But even that one, that's like a good case where if you were to look at the raw render of that, it's not as powerful of an image. There's still lots of like post processing and level adjustments and lighting tweaks to get the character to stand out against the background and to show the form, make it a little more appealing. So if you're starting out with Blender, I would definitely say don't settle for your raw render or your first render. It might be the best one, um, but just try, like just try and monkey around a little bit and see if you can't push a little further.
It's true. I guess this is where the cryptomat and the real-time compositor comes very useful, and light linking as well. I found light linking with Eevee or Cycles has been extremely revolutionary, and also the cryptomat system. Very useful for these things. Great. So, in your website, in your portfolio, you mentioned you had like the paintings from life, which were these. You're practically trying to interpret, get some texture, understand the colors, lighting, and composition and concepts. But you also have visual development, environment lighting and design, and visual development for games. So, what are some of the difficulties or the challenges that you have between doing only visual development in a render to visual development for a game?
That's a good question. Okay, so I think that fundamentally, like games and animation, even though they use a lot of the same skill sets, like are they have different constraints on the artist. So depending on the genre or depending on what type of game, um, you have to render on the fly, right? Like games are rendered live, kind of like Eevee is. So there's a lot of stuff you can do um, in Blender that you can't do in Godot or Unity or Unreal. So you have to be kind of aware of those constraints. So that's the technical constraint. There's another like strategic constraint. So unless you're working with a real big studio who has lots of resources, you have that good Fortnite money, um, you have to make everything yourself, right? So um, this art styles that you choose can make your life really easy or really hard, or they can create a lot of work for you or not create a lot of work for you, depending on what you choose. Um,
Mm.
I've talked with indies like a really small team, and they see something like Arcane, and they're like, "Oh, Arcane is so awesome," and like they just got a Substance Painter license, and they're like, "We're gonna do hand painted for all of our assets, and it's gonna be awesome, and we're gonna do this big Zelda game, and everything's gonna be hand painted, and it's gonna be beautiful." I was like, "Yeah, that does sound beautiful. That also sounds like so much work. Like it sounds
Labor
like so much
intensive.
work you might not finish your game." Um, so so there is a balance of like I think of it like a sophistication balance. Like just because you can do it and just because it looks good doesn't mean it's you're going to be able to pull it off when you scale it up throughout the entirety of a game. Um, and like that's the biggest thing. Like if you ever wonder like how come I see so many games with I've heard it called like the Unity art style, but basically like Untitled Goose Game, like lots of flat graphic shapes. So we're like, why is everyone using this style? And the answer is because um, it is a low scope style that can still look good. I'm not saying it looks bad, but like when you have flat graphic shapes, that hides a lot of sins, right? Like if you have like two meshes collide, like you can just collide two meshes and no one will ever know. Versus like sculpting them and then doing retopo and then rigging them. Um, so they save themselves a lot of work. Yep, because it's economic. That's right.
That's right.
Um, but as an indie, you kind of have to be on the lookout for that. So for my game, that's one of those things where it's like it's been difficult for me because I think one of the main points of differentiation that we might have, this is all unproven, so this could all be totally wrong. Um, I think one of the points of differentiation we might have is like my art style and my like lighting sensibilities and just the way I can make things look in Blender. But that's a problem because I loathe lighting in Unity. I hate lighting in Unity. It's it, every time I crack it open, setting up light probes and suns and like figuring out like the shadow resolution and stuff. It drives me insane. So um, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do I take exactly what I see in my Blender render and then like get it into Unity. And I think we hit upon something, but it might I might have fallen for that trap though. Like it is a little extra work than just like having a Unity asset that you just copy and paste and there you go, your level is done. So we'll see.
So we'll see. 3D Art has asked some good questions about generalism and shining out. So you mentioned that you had your role, and we're going back a little bit. Um, do you think in a smaller team it's easier to shine as a generalist in that regard? I think we've covered that to some degree.
Yeah, I think so. I see like when I go to GDC, like I see a decent amount of portfolios um, from 3D artists, and I see kind of like two things that could be improved. Like one is like here I've made a bunch of guns, and it's like either they're not lit or it's just like a really neutral HDR lighting, and they're just like floating in a void. Um, which if you're going to show that to um, a technical specialist, they might be able to look at that and see your mesh flow and how efficient you've been, and they might be able to appreciate that. Uh, but they're operating on like a logical level rather than like an emotional level. So I usually tell that person like try and put the gun in context or like shoot it up a little bit. Like you can have the technical stuff on the side, but like the first thing you should see should be like, well, it should make you think like, whoa, that's freaking awesome. If guns are your thing.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing I see a lot is very realistic stuff. Like here's my terrain pack of like my super realistic trees and my super realistic doors. All of the shader work is all like high res 4K textures off of like some texture site. Um, and I usually advise against that also because in the current landscape, asset stores exist and offshoring exists. So like if you're Ubisoft and you're working on um, like your next Assassin's Creed game and you want it to be realistic, like chances are like there is a studio in India or like Thailand or Vietnam that you've never heard of. They're just cranking out, you know, bugs, potted plants, doorknobs, whatever. So they're not doing that work in house, or that stuff just exists already, and they're buying it in bulk from like an asset house. So if you want to work for one of those companies, doing the photoreal work doesn't really help you. That's why like I kind of advocate for style more, because then if you have a unique style or a unique voice, if you think you've hit upon something that no one else has, um, that makes you a little more difficult to I would say difficult to replace, but that makes you I think more um, attractive to like potential studios. And then if it's a small studio, if you can do lots of things, like I can do the concept, the modeling, the rigging, animation, um, the more hats you can wear, the more valuable you'll be to a small studio.
I highly agree with this. This is episode 108, and I mean, this was a common theme that we often talk about generalism, specialization. value as an artist when it comes into things and doing style and painterly. Um, we often do alliances with other other Discord servers. Some are based on proceduralism, like Arendelle. Others are based on painterly and non-photoreal styles like Control Art Delete and others like that. It's this is a very valuable thing, especially in a world where content creation is easier than ever. The market
Yeah,
is more distracted than ever, so it's a lot harder to grab somebody's attention. And high fidelity rendering is much more accessible than ever, especially with Gaussian splats, photogrammetry 2.0, with new generated models and others like that, and 4D videos in 3D, etc.
that's
Um,
wild. Well,
it's
I have a
becoming
question for you
interesting.
actually.
Yes,
Okay, so for the longest time, like Painterly 3D was. Oh, my hair looks really wild. It's getting sweaty because it's getting hot in here.
it's okay.
So for the longest time, um, like Painterly 3D was like the nut that everyone was trying to crack, right? Like that was like kind of the gold standard of like, wow, that's really cool, that's 3D. Eh, But but now, like the Project Gold has come and been a thing, and all of this is like the Project Gold Blender studio project for everyone out there.
Yes, the last one
Um,
that got cancelled earlier this year, unfortunately, due to
yeah,
scope feature creep.
but like yeah, Scope Man is killer,
I
so
know.
dangerous. Um, but like they put all their tools out there, like they cracked it. They made Painterly 3D available and understandable for everyone who wants to do it. I'm surprised I haven't seen it proliferate as like I thought more people would be doing it. And now that that's a solved problem, I kind of anticipate that uh, there's going to be another city on a hill, right? There's going to be the next problem people are trying to solve, but I haven't really figured out what it is yet. Do you have any thoughts?
I had plenty of thoughts about this, mainly because I did just yesterday, last night, the CEO of Square Enix shared a very detailed, lengthy thread about the games industry at the moment and its collapse, impending
Mm,
collapse, when it comes to the transition of media and development, which was interesting. I find it the reason I think about it because I love world history. I love geopolitics. Sometimes I like to understand
yeah.
trends and things like that, and theorize about concepts and culture through the cycles of different things. So when it comes to Painterly, we've had maybe 20 years of a the golden goose was the PBR render, the golden goose of technology, the graphics, everything was supposed to render as realistic as possible, as high fidelity as possible, the highest textures, the highest graphics, the highest everything to get the highest fidelity. But we came from an era, the 20 years before then, where we were doing an economic sense of animation, where it was the cheapest, easiest method of abstraction and animation, where cell shading and acrylics was the de facto, where watercolor backgrounds were rendered on glass plates, and that we had to have hundreds of people filling in the ink. And so we had to have low frame rates and be as economic as possible, where the anime was born, where the Disney style was born, and things like that. So we went from minimal, cheap abstraction with some kind of shortcuts by using rotoscoping or others to realistic um, impersonation, I guess you could say, storytelling with visual effects and audio visuals and animation as well. And then it goes round back to the full circle for a new type of balance. To me, I think, for example, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, uh, Michelle and the Machines, um,
Mm-hmm.
Spider Verse, the first two films, Arcane, and the anime boom,
Demon Hunter.
Demon Hunter as well, um, and also Puss in Boots as well. A number of these, this is a concept where people have a fatigue of seeing realistic media. And as you say before, they want to go back to story, expressionism, abstraction. So Painterly is very new because Painterly hasn't been done before, because now we have high fidelity abstraction, which sounds like a contradiction. But I see this as a necessity culturally because it requires a story from an experience from a world where there's so much content being built. And a lot of it's filmed on your phone. So I think it's just the way that it's the hunger that culture needs, in my opinion. But I'm not sure. I do have a question from YouTube that did come out. It was how do you deal with using assets when you're working with a team? Because sometimes I feel guilty when I use getting an imposter syndrome. So how do I steal like an artist? But how do I navigate using assets for different cases? And how do I and I'm going to add to that question. How do I have my own voice in a world where there's so many styles or adherence to standards?
Yeah. I might not be a great person to answer this question because I generally do not like using assets. um, I'd use them for some things that I aren't okay. We're talking games, right? I'll use them for some things that aren't the focus of the game. Like for instance, hand drawn animated VFX. So we're doing like kind of like a Pokemon-esque game. You have attack animations. Like a fireball screen. That's something that if I were to do it myself, I can't do it really well. If I have the budget, I'll hire someone to do it. Um, but I generally, yeah, this is actually something that's happened a few times on our games where it's like, okay, well, we'll just, like we'll try and save some time and we'll use this asset. Um, and then like we'll put it in the game. Then after a month, I'm like, I can't stand to look at this anymore. I'm just gonna make my own version. And I'm not saying this is the right approach because I've shipped 0 games so far. So again, this might be horrible advice. Um, you can make assets your own. You could like reskin them, or like so you could do some interesting shader work. You could. One thing I wouldn't use assets for, no matter what, is characters. Like there's an asset guy named Cinti. There's like a billion like Cinti rigged animated Cinti characters. Um, and I actually see them a lot, even in like game trailers. And I feel like it's just poison for your game because it's like uh, it makes your game not unique, and especially if you're an indie, like unique is the thing. Like unique is the reason why people play your game. So it's like if your game looks like other games because it's using the same assets, you're in trouble. And you can hide it better for things like chairs and plants. But if it's like the main character, I think you're kind of that's going to be trouble. You can do stuff, and we've done it where it's like there's like a skeleton, and like the animation is pretty okay, but like the character design in the head is like particularly bad. So I'll like model a new head and parent it to the big head bone, and like maybe I'll like scale up the hands so the hands are bigger to make it a little more Mega Man portions, which suits one of my games. So you can still like go in and tweak things, especially if you have your conversant in Blender. Um, I thought, sorry, this just reminded me of something I saw on YouTube once. I saw an indie dev on YouTube being like, "Oh, this is how we use um, assets in the asset store," and they said, "Okay, what you do is you like take the chair model, and you take it into Blender, and then you apply the solidify modifier to everything and make everything a little bit more puffier." And I was like, "Oh my god, you just doubled the quad count." um, but I mean, it's probably not that big a deal. Their game is probably performant enough, but still, I just had a chuckle. Like, hey, the modifier does what you think it's doing. There's a better one. You gotta do what you can to ship your game. So I guess that's okay. But that's one of the things. One of the reasons I'm passionate about shaders is like you can really change the tone and tenor of something just by your shader design or your shader choices. So if you have to use assets, I would like scale things to fit the style of your game, tweak designs a little bit, and then take a look at the shaders and see if there's some way that you can kind of um, fit up a little bit.
True. Going back to the Painterly. So, what do you consider? I did mention earlier, like, I think Painterly is important because it brings character, as you mentioned before, the style of having your character style, your art style, your shape style, color style, language style, the environment style. Having a personality in your artwork makes you more of a unique, valuable asset in the industry. So, using shaders and the compositor, how would you apply a painterly effect? What are your fundamental techniques?
So there's a couple ways that you can do it. Um, and it's funny too because so this piece that you're looking at now, um, I was doing some commission work for an AR game, and it was the first job. Like I had just kind of hit upon this style in my personal work, but I'd only done like one or two pieces this way, and I did it for this AR game, and I made a whole bunch of illustrations for it, and then it got buried under NDA
Oh
for
no.
years. It would eventually be years, but like after the project was done and it was buried under NDA, I was like, no, no one will see this kind of like thing I'm figuring out. So I made this kind of like series of 4 images with this little black mage guy to kind of like push the style into to kind of show it off. So even and this again was like 6 years ago now. So even this is like feeling very old to me. But there's really no trick to this. So this is like just lots of little image textures, like just hand painted. Go in Photoshop, paint like a million little squares, put some gradients on things, like have a little ragged edge. Um, and I would just have like a library of all these like little squares and shapes. And then this was before Eevee that I made this. So this was also very painful because I couldn't really see I really couldn't see the image texture very well when I was like assembling all these pieces.
Oh, well,
Um, yeah. Oh my god, I forgot how painful it is. So so then you just take these lots of little shapes and little repeating shapes, and then you build them up into kind of larger forms. And I still haven't gotten over the effect of like when you have like just the two. Can you see my hand? If you
yes.
have the two image planes really close, and there's just like a little ambient occlusion between them, and you can see that they're kind of offset. For some reason, like um, there's just something about it that I even after all these years haven't like gotten over. So I still use it in lots of different ways.
I
So that's the
think you're
simplest
onto
way.
something. Yeah, I mean, this particular piece is actually one of my favorites that you've done on the portfolio. Is you really
Oh, thank you.
nailed. I mean, orange is one of my favorite colors, but the shapes, the way you layered the shapes, the way you've worked the subject, the lighting, the hint of texture. I've noticed you also with your larger pieces, you also are using texture in the full image as well sometimes. And
Yeah.
you're also
Um,
working with the layered shapes. It's like the tiles are floating on top of each other. I think, yeah, this was kind of like the catalyst to a winning formula.
so one thing I do now, so like okay, those steps. If we're just gonna get in the nitty gritty, so look at those steps. Um, so you don't want to. you don't want to have a million image textures in your file of like, okay, here's the image texture for the top step where I like paint, like paint where the moth is going to be. Um, so I have a lot of techniques for say, here's a shader, um, like identifies the top plane and then makes a gradient, and then combining that with noise textures to then procedurally create a ragged edge. And you can do it with a noise texture. You can do it with a seamless painted texture, even an unseamless painted texture, really. Um, and then you can just like take your mesh from that step, take the mesh, dupe it, use a displace modifier or something so that there's a little offset, and then you do the other shader that makes this kind of procedural moss stuff on the top. I like to do things like that a lot. Or there's another piece up here that you have if you zoom out a little bit. It kind of looks like a little acorn guy on a little stone lantern house.
Acorn guy and a little stone anchor.
Let's see, let's see.
Which one would it be?
Where is it? Where is
This
it?
one? No.
Oh, actually, I don't see it.
Wait, let me just take a look and see if I. Where would it be?
But where would it be? Oh, it's under environment and lighting design on the website. That's the first one.
This one? Oh, this one. The one with
Yeah.
the fireflies?
No, I'm sorry. This must be real riveting. Okay, well, just how about the one with the bonfire? That's another.
All right, let's
I
go.
can just throw it off.
Bonfire. This guy.
That one. Yeah. So if you like zoom in real close to the log that they're leaning up against, yes. So like the way that you get those like really interesting textures is like you can make hand painted texture sheets with lots of um, alpha space in between them. So it's not just like grass. You can do that with like that bark. Yeah, right there. This is I don't know. Like I shouldn't be so impressed with myself, but it's just something it's just something that I like a lot. Um,
I
and
like
it's
it.
so easy to do. Like it really is.
I might have to give this a try and give it a go. Because it is a very nice technique that you've mastered in many things. Like here in the bark.
Mhm.
Absolutely gorgeous.
That one is before I figured it out, so I did that the hard way.
Oh,
That's
you
just
did that
like a
hard way.
million. That's like a
Million layers of
million.
holes.
Yeah, yeah,
Where's the.
yeah. And I made a lot of those before geometry notes were a thing too. So like, and oh man, like the original particle system to this day, I still don't really fully understand it. Um, so an embarrassing amount of that stuff is hand done, where it probably could have been. I probably would proceduralize a decent amount.
Yeah, I understand. So, talking about Blender and the features of Blender, geometry nodes, knowing your tool set, working like that. How excited are you about the upcoming release of 4.5 and 5.0? Oh, this is something that you touched the topic on. You really wanted to talk about the future of Blender, the features of Blender, the tool sets as well, beyond just
Yeah.
shaders and compositor. How clued up? What are the top features that you've had in mind that is coming, cooking, or going to be cooked, or have been cooked?
Yeah. The new like procedural normal, like basically, like smushing two blobs together and having a procedural theme. Like, yeah,
Doing that
I
here.
saw I saw you working on this
I'm currently trying to
because
do it
I
with a
mean,
group.
um, because so in the auto industry, um, like we use 3D software too. We use we use CATIA, but there's Pro E and there's a couple of, and like all of those parametric design software like you can do stuff like this. Like you can make an object and then boolean together and then like have a nice clean procedural radius all the way around things. Um, so yeah, when I started doing Blender, I spent forever looking for this. I'm like, gotta be a modifier or a setting or something that does this. I've tried the like data transfer stuff. We grab the normals off the surface. It works sometimes. I haven't gotten it to work all the time. You see that there's a Pixar series called Win or Lose. Um, and they were like I saw the rigor show the some of the stuff that they were using behind the scenes, and they're not using Blender, I don't think. But it's exactly this though. It's like they have like a blob that's the head, and then they have like a mouth rig that's just kind of like that's completely separate from the head. Yeah, FPS, nine distance field. And then they have ears, and they just kind of like all stick it together, and then it just allows for like real smooth, crazy animation that you can stretch really, really hard. Um, I've been trying to do that with like the data transfer. I was going to do a version of Snoo that had a face rig like that. Spent probably a month on it, but it wasn't quite ready for prime time. So I'm hoping that this is the answer to my dreams. Also, I hate retopology. Like the Snoo model, I didn't sculpt the Snoo model and retopo it. I hard surface modeled it and just dealt with it. I hate retopology. It never comes out well. Um, so if I could just do squishy characters this way, that'll be exciting.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm trying to work on that at the moment. The problem with the set mesh normals node is that I can get a mesh normal and I can set a mesh normal, but I don't know how to iterate through a group of objects. So each one would need to have like a hierarchy of, all right, let's get the normals this one, and then this one, and then this one. But how do you get the normals of all of them to mix together so that you have practically a different system? And with my
yeah,
experiment from last night from on Twitter was I managed to use the same normal data to push the shape to change the silhouette so you kind of make it look blobby. There's lots of potential on it, but I'm still working on a prototype to make it actually work the way that I want it to
yeah.
work. I'm
And
still
and and that's kind of maybe that's going to be the next big thing is like um there's like a couple golden cows to kill, right? Like
hmm.
how do you how do you make complicated shapes without you know booleaning things together or retopoing them? Like how do you just put shapes together easily? Or like how do you do like painted textures without UV unwrapping or doing vertex painting, which is like pretty intensive. So maybe that'll be the thing. It's like how do you get the same result but without all of the gaps that we're just kind of accustomed to? That could be cool.
Yeah, that's exciting. So what other features do you have?
Um,
I have a couple of it here on the list. Have you heard of the new sequencer? I know you're working in games and you've done some linear animation. So what do you think about the Blender 3D sequencer that's in development?
is this the thing that's going to replace the NLA track?
No.
Because I've heard they're going to get rid of the NLA editor, but I'm not too clear on what this is. Know what this is?
Um, in this case, this is a little bit like it's called a. This is more like what I have already developed here. Just give me a moment
Hmm.
to find it.
Sorry, I shouldn't say get rid of the NLA editor. I think they're gonna like revamp it or make it more intuitive or something like that.
Wait, where is my Blender? Before
I mean, once the collection is rendered, it looks pretty good. Once you get out of normal mode,
well, one of
hey,
them's
you're
working.
close. You're close.
Pretty close. I'm a hair's width away, and then I'll pack it as an asset. All right, so 3D sequencer. If you're looking on my screen, The 3D
Mhm.
sequencer is basically you add a scene strip. A scene, you would have like a new shot, for example. So let's just use my add-on to make some new shots. So I'm like shot 0. I would pin the shot 0 or my key shot. I would add in a scene. So I'll go to Shift A, add a scene, shot 1. Shift A, add another scene. Let's say shot 2. And finally shot 3. And I can turn on the synchronization and it will, let's imagine I'm in scene 1. So this is scene 1, I'm going to add a cube. And then scene 2, I'm going to add a circle. And then scene 3, I'm going to add a torus. And now I have a single timeline for all 3 scenes. You can see that the scene contents are changing.
Mhm.
So Blender has been developing the system internally. We developed this for B4 Artist for over a year now from the Spa Studios code, which Falk did. So Falk is now revisiting the code and adding this to Blender natively. Hopefully it'll come to Blender 5.0, but maybe not, maybe 5.1, we'll see. Is this something that you would like, or what else?
I like I haven't done too many animatics, but it could definitely be cool. So this would be like instead of rendering each shot in its own file and then stitching them together after the fact, like you could kind of just do it all in one master file sort of thing.
Pretty much, yes. You could have all your shots in the same file. You could have also in the compositor with Blender 5.0 is you can have a common compositor node tree.
Mm,
So for example, I could
yeah,
have
that's pretty
a common node tree that would be referenced in all of the files. That's coming soon as well. The compositor nodes also has a number of updates, including texture nodes. So brick texture or gradient texture, and you also have a number of new vector utilities like combining, mixing, vector math, vector curves, vector rotations to assist on new things. You also have a new image info node, which is really nice. And I think there's
cool.
potentially a pixel, dimensions and resolution, which would give us a value. So we can have dynamic painterly effects to affect, for example, Kuwahara when you're in
Yeah,
4K and others like that.
that's pretty cool. Like, because there's definitely some stuff. There's some stuff that I like to do with shader nodes that I don't think you could do with compositor nodes, or if you can, it's difficult. Like monkeying around in UV space. So it's like monkeying around in screen space instead, I guess. Um, because like I know you can do like masks in screen space. Um, but I would love it if they just gave you like XY coordinates for the screen space, and then if you mess with those coordinates, that will like affect that output.
This is now possible in
Does
the
that
next
make sense?
compositor. Yes, this is now possible. So the image
Oh,
info node and relative to pixels as well. So image info node gives you a resolution, location, scale, dimensions. It gives you practically screen space, UV space for the compositor to do different things. So I've been
cool.
working on. I should probably save this just in case. Nah, don't worry. I've been working on some fake paper, for example. So
Hmm.
if we look on the top right, go into the compositing here, just delete the grease pencil. Is the compositing on? Yes. But it's not working. Why not? Into the camera. Always says it's not working. Why not? Okay, it seems like something's a bit off. Oh man, I used to have, okay. It seems like I haven't figured this out exactly. But
It
basically,
happens. It happens all the time.
yeah, especially when you're under pressure live, talking with
Oh yeah.
someone nice. But
If I show you the model, I'm sure I'll break this new model while I'm talking.
guaranteed, computers and pressure. But basically,
Are there any? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Peters.
I'm starting to be able to use relative to pixel scales of certain things. That's a new node as well. You can use your displacement. Then there's the remapping that you can use with the map UV node if you're using normals. In this case, because I'm using vector math, I can use the scale of the image to get an idea of how big it is, and I can get image coordinates. That's the other node that's new. Image coordinates gives us the normalized pixel and uniform coordinates of the actual screen space. So this changes everything. So we can get the normals, normalize it, and we can use that with the image coordinates to then scale and use, for example, I'm normalizing the normals using a map UV node. I'm using arctan and arcsine to recreate the UV map. I'm scaling that in and mixing that in to deform textures and things like that, and then blurring that into the world space. So I could have a paper texture in theory if this was rendering. Let's just see if this will do it. Why doesn't it render? Is it because of this? Crash. All right, yeah, there's probably a bug in 5. Anyway, but in theory, like you could remap your UVs or remap the normals to the U, or remap a texture to the normals of your mesh objects, or to screen space, and a number of other effects. So that's a new thing. Have you heard of the new jitter brush controls? Hue,
That's
saturation, and
exciting
value.
because I don't do. I use that a lot when I paint in Photoshop. And I don't do any painting in Blender, to be honest. I would love Blender to just include, like, it doesn't have to have everything that Photoshop does, but just like give me layers, give me blend modes, give me like maybe 2 or 3 adjustment types and masks, and I'm happy. So I'm hoping this is the first step of
Yeah, I hope so too.
the
I
way.
mean, it's pretty good. I mean, getting some color jitter while painting is going to be excellent.
I think like do you think that they'll get the brush engine to like a Procreate or Photoshop level of sophistication? But that seems like, I mean, it's a solved problem in terms of like people know how to do it. And it seems like it would be a huge bonus for the program, but I'm surprised that they haven't gotten to that level
One of the core issues with the texture painting is the engine that does it. They've optimized it
yet.
greatly, but it's still very slow. And when you use UDIMs, it goes even slower. So the
So,
textures have been drawn, they're working on Eevee to make texture loading parallelized on the GPU, meaning
mhm.
it will get a massive texture read and write and loading of textures and compiling them much faster. The brush engine system has been kind of refactored little by little this year behind the scenes. And the jitter is just the first user front facing feature that's come out. But behind the scenes, all this year, there's been a lot of code improvements to try, build, and upgrade Vulkan. That was the first
Yeah.
problem. OpenGL has its limits, and because of its limits and its deprecation, they couldn't develop textures to be more performant. So you have to use Vulkan to start opening doors to get better performance when it comes to the drawing code of Blender. So
Yeah.
just the last version and this current version will be the first official Vulkan reliable version of Blender. Now in the next year or two, these things are going to change and hopefully it will
Mm.
open many doors. We'll see.
Yeah. I should note too that I am um, not super technically minded, so I could just be talking out of my ass. I'm like, this seems like it should be easy. Why can't they do it? And then like someone's like, no, you dummy, that's super. freaking difficult. So yeah,
Dreaming's
I
free,
don't know what
yes.
I'm talking about. Yeah. Um,
It would be lovely,
but
but like the Substance Painter has its own render engine built from the ground up very recently, for example. So it's very performant. Mari as well has been built from the ground up to paint 16K textures without blinking an eyelid, right? It's designed
makes
only for
sense.
textures. But if you told Mari to do animation, or if you told Mari to do geometry nodes or something like that, or Substance Painter to do that, it would be impossible because their engine is just doesn't factor those things in. Meanwhile, Blender does. That's why Blender gets slow sometimes because it's trying to do everything.
Yeah, my other wish list item, and this is like totally uh probably out of left field. I would love, so like with my like style, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would love for grease pencil to interact with the cycles, right? Like it'd be great if I could just like go and like paint my things in grease pencil and then like save them and then like instance like a little great blade of grass, then instance it out and like have it all render in cycles, nice cycles lighting. Um, that's my other wish. But no, I don't think that's coming on the horizon anytime soon.
Cycles is pretty performant. You can almost do the same. Actually, talking of that, what do you think of the new MPR prototype and the future of Blender and MPR rendering? There's a lot going on there. There's a lot cooking behind the scenes. I've managed to talk to one of the developers who worked there with Goo Engine, and I kind of know what's happening. And now things have been eternally approved to start developing
Oh,
the system officially inside of Blender, which means we get
oh, it's help.
half Lambert potentially.
Mhm.
We would have pre-processing on a object and shader level, which means we can do post pre-processing effects before the compositor on a shader level, allowing us better access to render buffers, including curvature, silhouette, line, and others. They're working on this right now. I doubt it will come out in Blender 5.0. But what do you think? What do you think of the NPR future of Blender and their decisions to support this technology?
Yeah. Honestly, I think you might know a lot more about this than I do. Sorry, but that sounds awesome. Like, okay, so because I know accessing curvature info is difficult. Like, because mostly I'm trying to like access like you're making grunge maps or something, and it only works in cycles, and even then it's kind of finicky to dial in, getting a map from your curvature. Um, oh, awesome. And you said line too. Does that mean they'll have like a better, I mean, like an alternative to freestyle that actually works? Is that on the horizon?
I mean, you can kind of do that with a compositor already-ish in geometry nodes as well. For example, Love, Death, and Robots, the last episode of season 6. Do you remember that one with the airplane and there's a demon? Did you watch that one?
No, no, I haven't.
Oh,
Uh,
I can't
those
spoil
that
anything for you.
I watched. Sorry, well, I watched the first season. And it made me kind of sad. So I didn't watch. That's the one. Like the guy who did Marathon. That's the one that he did. Right? Like the Lady in the Lake. Sorry, I'm a bad guest. I'm way out of touch.
All right.
Anywho,
All right.
um,
Anyhow, I love Death and Robots. If you watch it, watch the last episode of the last season, 6 seasons later. Just the last episode.
okay,
This airplane was
okay.
built in Blender, and the lines were done and rendered with geometry nodes.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
And
the only way I've. Go ahead.
oh, I see if I can find an image on this. Yeah, carry on.
Well, the only way that I've been able to do outlines is um do you know there's a YouTuber named Ace Rolla who does like a lot of like technical art stuff. He's amazing. But he did one on the difference of Gaussians in order to make outlines. And I've used that a few times, and that's worked out. Are you familiar with that uh, at
Difference
all?
outlines. Difference outlines?
difference of Gaussians. So like if you like take two images and blur them, but you blur them differently, and then you subtract them from one another, it will it'll give you outlines depending on like what's being blurred. So for instance, like you could like take the normal data and blur it twice and do this, and then from that um, you can kind of pinpoint it like, oh, I only want to draw lines where there's like a fast fall off, like on the z normal, right, the top surface of things. Um, and then there's like the Sobel and Hirsch, and there's a couple other nodes in there that you can kind of get a little bit. Not like super. I haven't gotten it like super high quality, but it is fun to play.
Yeah, I have used it. It's difficult to do it on everything reliably, especially with alpha cards, because the AUVs don't sometimes show the alpha and then the Pruitt or the Kirsch is going to draw on top of that and it draws lines on noise. So you have to be careful with the geometry. It's difficult.
Yeah, it can get messy. And like for something like this papery kind of style, it doesn't. But but for like the Reddit stuff where everything is super clean and very simplified, it's okay. There was a time before this rebrand where I was converting the old 2D style into 3D, and like we did a lot of tests to see if we could like capture the outline. This is like the style that's used for avatars on the site. Um, yeah, man, we tried forever to get good outlines without having to hand draw them. That was always the pain in the butt.
Well, whew, man, time has flown by. Actually, just to let you know, we've gone 20 minutes over our general time doing the interview. There
Oh
was
dang!
feedback on my last episode that it was a bit long. Today is even longer, but I really
Uh,
enjoy it. So I'm going to actually tie it up. Um,
okay,
so we've talked of Blender technology, we've talked of your art trajectory, how you pivoted, how you got into it, how you became a journalist, how you pushed through with and without wanting, and how you applied your background and your common ground into new tech and your style, how you developed your personality, how you manage your work as an art director, what's the difference between creative and art direction. We talked a little bit about technology of compositing and the future of Blender and other things like that. Last but not least, I wanted to show that we are currently running a competition in the Beefwriter server for a splash screen, and we currently have 2 entries as a work in progress. The first piece we have is by MRGR, which is a really
ooh,
beautiful piece of a portal and an armored, I guess you could say juggernaut almost coming out.
yeah,
We've got 2 color balances. He's been working on this piece for a week and a bit. And the other piece that we have submitted in the Control Art Delete server is done by Prashan Singh, and who we have interviewed here before, which has a really beautiful campfire piece and also a forest right up your alley. A little bit of
yeah.
stylization and
This has
textures.
got some wild robot vibes.
That's right, heavily inspired. So just to give you a quick preview, there are prizes. First prize is getting viewport scopes, so you have color balance scopes directly in the viewport as a first prize by Erasers 45 Studios. Second prize is a Geometry Nodes bridge generator that you can draw curves and it will create wooden bridges everywhere, and it's quite good. And third prize is by Ashley, which is a PS1 triangle snapping, I guess you could say, rendering system that makes your your mesh snap to the viewport as if it was rendered on a PlayStation 1 as third prize. And also, if you participate, I will also donate a custom build of Beefwriters with your splash screen if you enter on request. So get your own version anyway for just playing. So any last thoughts? Cave.
Uh, just keep it up, guys. It's hard out there. A lot of people, a lot of people are struggling, and I know there's probably at least someone out there who's like either trying to break in or they're between jobs and the industry is just slow. Um, and just, you know, be kind to yourself, take some time when you need it, and keep on trucking.
It's good one. Yeah, because it's getting rough these days. All right. Well, good one. And also from the chat, thank you so much. Without it, I didn't want to go without ending. Thank you for the event. It was a bit of a surprise when Discord Auto joined me, but completely worth it. Great interview. Thanks for the encouraging words. And also, it was quite lively on YouTube as well. Lovely words.
Cool.
Just subbed. They love the concept of difference of Gaussians, and yeah, it's been very exciting. So thanks, Kay, for sharing your work, sharing your experience, sharing a little bit about technology. I like talking about this, and I hope we can talk again soon. So in
Yeah, man, I love it.
Yep, in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to give a heads up. We may be interviewing Thomas from CG Matter. So stay tuned for 2 weeks from now. So thanks. Talk to you later.